you've seen obviously the US step up and give like a little bit more leeway to Ukraine in terms of what it can use and how it can use it. But that's only going to stretch so far. And as I watch not just the new administration take shape, but the new Republican Congress take shape, it's not clear to me that the most pro-Ukraine voices are going to be as empowered as they have been.
Matt Gaetz, Donald Trump's Attorney General pick, has withdrawn from consideration to lead the Department of Justice. The former Florida congressman said his nomination was becoming a distraction to the work of the Trump-Vance transition team. Gaetz has been the subject of a House Ethics Committee investigation into allegations of sexual misconduct and illegal drug use. Oh, my teeth. And his withdrawal coincided with the release of new allegations that he'd had sex with a 17-year-old minor on a second occasion. Gaetz has denied any wrongdoing. So let's speak to Siobhan Hughes, Capitol Hill reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Siobhan, hello.
Hi, good to be here.
Okay, so what about this? The reaction to Gaetz withdrawing. Were people expecting it, or were they shocked at, well, the limits on Donald Trump's power and influence here?
I would say that even though there was a lot of opposition to Matt Gaetz on Capitol Hill within the Senate, people were still caught off guard. Donald Trump is a president who Republican senators had a very, very hard time restraining during the first administration. And because he this time won the popular vote, the feeling was it was going to be much, much harder to oppose him this time. So, yeah, there was a certain sense of shock that they stopped him. They stopped him this quickly, and they stopped him without the need of going through a confirmation hearing.
What do you think did it for him? Because he initially said, hey, I'm really pleased with the support I'm getting on Capitol Hill. I think that was only yesterday. So 24 hours later, look, how did we get here?
Well, so yesterday on Wednesday, Matt Gaetz was meeting with Republicans from the Senate Judiciary Committee and also members of leadership. This stretched far into the night. And as one senator put it to me, Matt Gaetz knows how to read the room. And he must have read the signals that he was getting. And they didn't have to be overt for him to get the message that he was not going to have the votes. All it would take would be 4 Republican senators to defect. And it was pretty clear that's where we were.
Right. And looking at the Financial Times for Friday morning, and this story's on the front page. It says, Gaetz deals blow to Trump by pulling out of nomination as Attorney General. And I'm wondering, was it really a blow? Wasn't this factored in? I mean, Trump's strategy being, perhaps I'll give them someone so outlandish that when he falls, I'll give them someone pretty strong still, and they'll think, okay, phew, we'll let this one go through.
So it's hard to know exactly what was in Trump's mind, what his intention was. It's possible that was piece of it. At the same time, Trump put forward a lot of nominees in the vein of Matt Gaetz, people who had some type of problem either in their personal background or in terms of their policy position. And so there was sort of a shock and awe aspect of this, of Republicans weren't going to be able to deal with the backgrounds of all of these nominees at the same time. And maybe in letting go of Gaetz, Trump has calculated he feels he's got a better chance of getting at least some of these other folks through.
But what about the opposite? Perhaps senators, perhaps congressmen and women might smell blood and they think, we can show our influence, we can flex our muscles, and there might be other people like the defense secretary pick, the nominee Pete Hegseth, who they think is not qualified. Maybe we can bring him down too.
That was not the read that I got in my conversations on Capitol Hill today with aides and with Republican senators. The sense there was that Republicans can stand up to Donald Trump, but it's only going to be able to go so far. And the reason for that is that there is a belief among many Republicans, including mainstream Republicans, that kind of the media, the establishment are sort of in cahoots and out to get Donald Trump. And Republicans are at real risk, or they view themselves as being at real risk if they take actions to endorse that particular view. And the reason you can tell they're a little bit afraid of that is that while Republican senators stopped Matt Gaetz, not a single one has stepped out to formally put their name to it. Their objections were registered mildly, almost mutely, and that tells you something.
Yeah, I see that the committee, the House Ethics Committee, obtained records, we're told by the Washington Post, showing that Gaetz had paid women for sex. And a lawyer representing the women, this is from the Financial Times, who testified to the committee, also said one had witnessed Gaetz having sex with an underage girl. Still, though, Siobhan, Donald Trump praised him in a post on Truth Social, saying he had a wonderful future ahead of him. That sounds like a stretch. What do you think happens to Matt Gaetz now?
It does sound like a stretch, and we were asking these questions all around Capitol Hill today. For example, what do you think about Matt Gaetz? Would he have a chance of running for governor in Florida, for example, which was one of his ambitions? But at least at this point, all of the avenues he had planned to take out of Congress seem very much cut off to him. You have to remember that he built a lot of bad will among Republicans in Congress for his determinative role in pushing House Speaker Kevin McCarthy out of office. And so he's really got some regrouping to do. That said, I will offer this one caveat, which is that even people who do not like Matt Gaetz and who do not trust him think that he is extremely, extremely bright.
Extremely bright. Well, that's one way of putting it, Siobhan. What about the overall feel of the way this administration in waiting is taking shape? What are you hearing?
There is a lot of unease among Republican senators at the cabinet decisions that Donald Trump is making. And while Matt Gaetz has been taking up all the oxygen in the room, there are already conversations now that are looking at other folks like the Pentagon chief nominee, Pete Hegseth, or Tulsi Gabbard, who he would like to be the head of DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, and even Robert Kennedy Jr. to be Health and Human Services Secretary. And so what you would expect is that the scrutiny would now focus on these candidates, each of whom has his or her own personal or policy issues in the background.
And how signed up are people to the Elon Musk Doge agenda, him and his partner Vivek Ramaswamy? I'm just looking at a picture here of Trump and Musk at the UFC in Madison Square Garden over the weekend. And the headline is this: Elon Musk's first order of business in Trump administration, kill remote work. How popular a move will that be?
Well, among the rank and file workers in the executive branch, probably not so popular. But among Republican senators, there is probably a lot of support for that. The Republicans generally believe that the agencies really need to be shaken up, either because of the actions employees are taking or because of the perceived kind of bulk or extra weight across the government. So that's an area where Trump probably has some room to maneuver in terms of his decision making. But again, I will offer another caveat there. During his first term, President Trump did start firing people across various branches of the government. And he did get pushback from Republicans because you have to remember, a lot of the Republican senators have placed their own people in these agencies. And so Trump may want to cut, but there could be some limits to what he's going to be able to do.
What about limits to the bromance between Musk and Trump? I see quite a number of analysts saying it's going to explode.
I have heard that as well. And basically what it boils down to is you cannot have two queen bees in the same hive. And so
Queen
everyone's
bees,
expecting
I like that.
so somebody's going to have to exit.
Right. And have you got any response to the increased saber-rattling between Vladimir Putin and, of course, the Western allies of Ukraine? Because, of course, most people think that Putin rubbed his hands with glee when Donald Trump was elected and is waiting for January the 20th so that he can get the war ended within a day. But between now and then, quite a lot could happen.
Between now and then, it's true, quite a lot could happen. And you've seen, obviously, the U.S. step up and give like a little bit more leeway to Ukraine in terms of what it can use and how it can use it. But that's only going to stretch so far. And as I watch not just the new administration take shape, but the new Republican Congress take shape, it's not clear to me that the most pro-Ukraine voices are going to be as empowered as they have been. For example, the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, is no longer going to be leader. He's going to have a much more ancillary role. You're seeing some of the prominent House members on the Republican side look like they're starting to get sidelined. And so this is very much a ball in play, something that I think we're all watching.
But if Russia, as we saw today, tests more new intermediate range missiles on Ukraine and makes further threats to the US, to Britain, to France, allies of Ukraine, won't that stiffen some backbones in Congress?
It will stiffen some backbones in Congress, but you're still going to have a Donald Trump at the very, very top. And so, unless the Congress decides to do something congressionally, maybe stuff a lot of money into an appropriations bill that it forces Donald Trump to spend, it's unclear how much leverage they're going to have. And also, don't forget that Donald Trump has basically called for undoing that law, the Impoundment Control Act, that says a president has to spend money the way Congress intends for him to spend it. He is not a fan of that and is going to try to get out of those shackles. So be careful of projecting the past into the future, I would say, in that regard.
All right, Siobhan Hughes, Capitol Hill reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio.